Hello everyone, back. Track number 2. Happy to see full house. I guess it's one of the best tracks today, and we have another very good highlight coming up on stage right now. Did you ever wonder in your news feed which one is presented on top to you? And why? What's the reason behind? We will hear now about responsible content personalization strategy. Responsible. Welcome from me on stage, Cristina Kadar. A warm welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Cristina is a data science and machine learning product owner at NZZ. In Zurich, I probably don't have to explain who is NZZ. She is responsible for the customer-facing as well the editorial data. And on top of that, she is the industrial expert at the Media Technology Center of ETH Zurich, where researchers and industry shaping really the future of media, and I think is a lot of work ongoing. Cristina, floor is yours.
Thank you, and welcome. I want to spend the next 20 minutes or so walking you through some of the learnings we have done around building and scaling responsible algorithm content recommendations, especially in the news domain. But what this talk ultimately is, it's a declaration of love. My love for the magic that happens at the intersection of innovative data science and good product, user-centric product management. My name is Cristina Kadar, and I'm the data science and machine learning product owner at NZZ. Neue Zürcher Zeitung, it's the Swiss newspaper of record in German, located just a few steps here down the lake. So, why do we need actually algorithmic recommendations in news? Well, your typical newspaper, such as NZZ, publishes around 100 stories per day. So for digital users, it's easy to miss important articles due to the high frequency of change and the limited space we have on our curated distribution channels, such as the front page. So here you see a print screen of the NZZ front page at a random day, at a random time. You're already a lot of articles, and it's not even a third of the front page. So at their core, as any other recommender system, news recommender systems solve an information filtering problem. But with what goals in mind? Well, as any other business, and especially a subscription-based business, we want to increase user engagement and ultimately solve for better subscription and retention. So you would want to provide relevant recommendations so that users at every step in the conversion funnel are more informed and become more engaged with the product. We know that newly registered users, if they are exposed to more content, and especially more diverse content, are more likely to subscribe. Also, once they are subscribed, we know that their engagement is negatively correlated with the probability of churn. At the same time, and maybe differently, in the news domain, you want to responsibly address user needs and concerns and uphold editorial judgment. NZZ is a company that's over 200 years old. It has a very established brand and reputation that you want to be conscious of. So you want to design responsible recommendations. And by that, I mean mindful of the user's voice and the newspaper's curation principles. So in the last 5 years and more, we have found ourselves at the center of this balancing act of FOMO, fear of missing out. So if there is no personalization, the user might feel an information overload, and they might ask themselves, what am I missing from all this deluge of information? On the other hand, if there is too much personalization, and there's a lot from social media, there is still this fear of a filter bubble. So the users might think themselves, again, what am I missing out? What are they not showing me? with time, we found some success stories of how to address this balancing act responsibly, and I want to share that with you today. At the core, it's an interdisciplinary, iterative, and experiment-driven approach. Interdisciplinary, we've been always a very tight team with people from the data and the product team, always infused at important moments with knowledge from the editorial team. Iterative, we all use agile methods, and they might come in different shapes and forms. In the beginning, we used OKRs. Now we are using missions. The whole point is here to ship iteratively and to learn fast. And that brings me to experiment-driven, and by that I mean test religiously. It all starts with a good user understanding. So you want from day one to address real user needs and concerns and start smartly and economically. And there are two dimensions to think about. On one hand is the type of personalization you're going to use in your product. And you can choose between active and passive personalization. In active personalization, you use explicit user feedback that you collect, for example, in the onboarding process or throughout the user experience, but that requires high upfront costs of development and a lot of buy-in from day one from everyone in the company. So if you want to start lean and have still good gains, the first learning I would give you is to start with passive personalization. That means using implicit signals from the behavioral data. And then in terms of use case, where do you apply personalization in the product? Well, front page, that's the most important piece of real estate in a news product. But it is very optimized already, right? Like I told you, of the whole history of the company. And at the same time, there might be an unclear value proposition for the user, or it might even be unwanted. So an easier way to start is in other places in the product. The easiest you can think are newsletters, but as well, for example, a dedicated personalized user area as an alternative to the front page, or article pages, where I also bring a use case. So at the end of the article, propose next reads. So like this, you can deliver value very fast to your user, and also you require maybe less cross-departmental coordination. The next step, transparency. And we had a lot of talks already about this also yesterday in the workshop around responsible AI. And I think this is the very minimum you can do. Two points here. Again, the minimum you can do is highlight personalization. So clearly mark algorithmically curated areas in the product versus manually curated areas. And think about explainability from day one. So first, on the user side, how to keep users informed and connected. One of the first things we've done together with the editorial team, we linked basically the areas that were personalized. We linked there an article explaining how the algorithm works in lay terms to our readers and giving them the opportunity to give us feedback. But the other part is the algorithmic approach, right? Like how can you design explainable approaches that can also be translated then maybe in product features. So that brings me to data and algorithms now. And at least 3 dimensions here to power that. It all starts with the data. Invest in first-party data, in your own tracking of rich behavioral data. For example, we don't use any social demographic data at base our algorithms on behavioral data that you do on our product and only on our product. And yes, of course, then we do collect a lot of logging data, so we need scalable cloud storage and processing infrastructure. I don't have time to go into detail. We are in Google Storage, Google Cloud, and use, for example, both Scala and Python for processing. If you have questions or talk about this in detail, come afterwards, grab me or ask in the Q&A. And finally, yeah, algorithmic development. In the very beginning, yes, could start with a buy, maybe a solution from a provider, or even now with a lot of cloud providers bring that out of the box. But if you're really serious about addressing this responsibly, about infusing all your domain knowledge and all the user needs into personalization, invest in an internal data science team that can then translate that into algorithmic approaches. And for that, a very high level now overview of what we do. When we talk about personalized now feeds in the product, we always use hybrid personalized recommenders that sort relevant articles from the article pool along several explainable scores. And we divide them into two broader categories: personal relevance and general relevance. And when I talk about personal relevance, that is, individually for you as a user. Which articles should we boost more for you? We've learned that content-based filtering in general works much better than collaborative-based filtering, although we use them both in a combination. And yeah, when looking now at content-based filtering and tying back to the two types of personalization, right? This can work both with implicit user history that we have from logging, or with explicit preferences that you might give us in the product. Another point here to make to the filter bubble, maybe, right? I truly think that recommender systems at the end of the day do what they are designed to do. So on one hand, yes, you can create recommender systems that propose you articles that are similar to what you have read in the past, but at the same time, they can just do the opposite. And we have that. We have something we call Surprise Me, which does the opposite. It tries to bring you recommendations that are usually out of your sphere of interest. And then the question is how you use this then in the product, where is it more useful, the one or the other? Yeah, and then in terms of general relevance, we look at two scores: trending score, that is basically a popularity-based score, and editorial score. I think this is quite specific to news and to NZZ even, where we prefer generally relevant articles as per our journalists. This can be done in different ways, right? One way is to just ask the journalist to rate an article and say, hey, this is important. Of course, everyone will say it's important, so that didn't work very well. So what we currently do, we re-engineer it by looking at the position of the article on the front page and how long it was there. Because that would mean, okay, it was deemed as important, right? If it was for a long time on position 1 on the front page. Good. I want to close the loop with experimentation. And here again, I bring 2 points. So in terms of metrics, we have learned over time to value business metrics over algorithmic metrics, and online experimentation over offline experimentation. What do I mean by that? Of course, in the initial phase of a project, you will fit your models on historical data and look at algorithmic metrics like precision and recall and coverage and all of that. But what ultimately is important is how these models then perform in production, in an online setting, that we evaluate the best performing, let's say, approaches from the offline evaluation in an online setup. And then, yeah, in terms of process, I cannot stress enough how important it is to invest early in the experimentation culture and in your experimentation platform so that you can scale this process. And yeah, I'm a data scientist, but it was very humbling to learn that feature changes, feature improvements, UX, UI improvements in the product are at least as important as good algorithms. And in terms of metrics, in terms of business metrics, right, the picture on the right, you can look at it at several levels, starting from local product metrics, like the click-through rate of your article feed, or how the users engage with the article once they clicked it, all the way to more like long-term user metrics, like the ones I mentioned in the very beginning, such as does the user subscribe in the end? OK, so this was the theory part, and now I bring you a use case where we applied all of this. And that was the revamp of the Next Read section on ncz.ch, so the daily newspaper, where we brought a fully algorithmic-driven Next Read section at the end of an article. So if you open the app and click on an article, right, you get to read it. We call that an article view. And then at the end, the question is, what's next? Do you go back to homepage? Do you keep reading? We redesigned this whole area. So we had many A/B tests over the course of a year. We tested both algorithmic and feature improvements. And in the end, 2 major deployments that I'll show. And the output were 3 algorithmic feeds. The author feed, this sources articles from the same author. Technically not that difficult, right? You just need metadata, but this addresses one of our most important user feedbacks we got, right? That people want to understand more the author behind it and what they have written in the past. The topic feed, this one goes more towards explainability. So and I will show an example. So basically, this is called Mehr zum Thema, and then the topic X, right? Which sources articles from the same topic. How do we define the topics and create the topics? That would be a talk in itself. But you can imagine this as a backend tool that employs natural language processing with human in the loop. So by now, almost all our articles have at least one topic associated with it. We have about 1,300 topics and growing steadily. And then finally, the user feed, which is a fully personalized feed and uses this balanced hybrid personalization approach with the different scores I showed you in the beginning. And let's see how it looks like. So this was the baseline. It was a rather boring design, right? And the algorithm, it was already algorithmically driven. It was already personalized, actually. But it was an external service, a bit quite black boxy. We didn't have control over it. And the perceived quality was bad. In version 1, we deployed the topic feed. So you can imagine this was an article about Facebook and metaverse and so on. So the main topic of that article was metaverse. So you can see Mehr zum Thema metaverse, and then below other topics that our algorithm found there, like Facebook and NFTs and so on. And then the second the second feed there, if you see I'm fallen, this is the user feed, the fully personalized feed. And in the second version, we also introduced the auto feed on top. The rest is then the same. And now to the results. I have also more details. So just 2 metrics quickly, more of these local metrics. So the weekly click-through rate on content teasers in the entire section improved by 48% and 73% respectively. It's a whole year that you look there, across different news cycles, across different situations, in the outside world. And you can see that although we have some fluctuation, the improvement versus the baseline, which is week 0 that you don't see here, was consistent. And the same with another metric, we call it completion ratio. This is a metric to measure the quality of engagement after the user clicks an article. So how many users have scrolled until the end once they opened an article? And here I compare our new personalized feed versus the old personalized feed. And also there you can see we had major improvements. Basically, that's the end. I just want to let you with some resources. We are pretty open of how we do data science at NZZ. So if you head to Medium, you'll find there some articles. Some are written by me, and some are written by some previous colleagues from the data team. Yeah, and I'm extremely happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Cristina. It's all about getting more subscriptions. If I hear about extensive behavioral tracking on your webpage, wouldn't there be like a niche market for the skeptical peoples where you say, okay, we don't track you at all, but you pay for it? Or the wrong question for a data conference? Maybe?
Yes. I mean, yes, we track, there are different ways of different levels of tracking, right, and different data you track, right? And this is the type of tracking that is paramount for the business, right? So we don't use anything that you do outside of our products. We don't share it with anyone else. We track your behavior on the product, and we use it on the product, just to make that clear. And then if you really, really care about it, you can get you can opt out for it, but then you'll also not profit then from any of the personalization services. So the option exists. And I also know of other companies that even kind of might have an even different type of subscription if you want that really specifically.
Questions from the audience?
Hi, thank you very much for the presentation, very interesting. Was just wondering, did you ever experiment in your quest to look for the optimal balance between too much personalization and too little? Did you ever experiment with giving the user kind of active control on a kind of temperature parameter, you could call it, that they could set up every time they visit the website and like, today, please surprise me, or today, leave me in my bubble.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And yes, if we would have unlimited resources also, on the product side to build all that feature in the front end, I think we would have done it already. So what we have done, it was only on the back end, let's say, we have experimented with different weights of those scores I have shown you before. And what we also do more and more, for example, if you have my NZZ, the newsletter, we also now kind of split them in separate paragraphs and explain, like, okay, this is what our editors think you should read from yesterday's 3 articles. This is based on user behavior what you should read. And then here, 2 things that you usually don't read, go explore. So we start giving the option to the user in that sense that they get all and they can choose what to read, but not at the level of the product that they customize it already.
Thank you. There's another one.
Thanks for the talk. Yeah, my question was actually going in the same direction. I was going to ask, like, these 3 scores, how are they weighted and how did you get to those weights?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. So in the very beginning, it was a business decision. We also, in each editorial team, or let's say each title, so NZZ am Sonntag versus NZZ versus maybe the local CH media brands where we also deployed the same kind of algorithms, they could decide, oh, I want more of that or more of that. I want a bit more personalization or I want more editorial. So in the beginning, definitely in specific areas of the product, it was a business decision. Now it depends a bit on the use case. We might optimize it slightly different. Or we even started now, as I mentioned there in my NZZ, to even split them in the product itself and give the users then the choice.
So I think we have one last question, maybe.
Hello, thanks. I have two small questions. The first is, how often do you decide to update the feed? And second question is, how do old school journalists and editors react to your
great question.
changes? Thanks.
So two feeds are absolutely in real time, like the first two, and the last one is every 3 hours. Because of course we also don't publish, every hour that we. So every 3 hours, right now the personalized feed. How do the journalists react to it? Well, one of the benefits that I actually didn't even mention is that we freed up editorial resources, because in the initial version they had to look up for related articles themselves manually and had to link them there. And now we said you can still do it, but if you don't do it, it's fine because we'll have this. And then in general, these are not the only things we do. So we actually do a lot of data products that are internal for the editorials themselves, for the editorial teams themselves, for them to understand how their content has performed in terms of engagement, for example. So, of course, it's an ongoing journey, but I think data literacy is really on a good path. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Cristina. A welcome applause. The nice SDS bottle, you should find your name on it. Thank you.